All right, let's get right into it. We're about to crack open one of the oldest cold cases you can imagine. We're going to try and piece together the last few hours of a man who died more than 2,000 years ago. And the key clue? Well, it's the last thing he ever ate.
Just look at this. When he was first discovered, this is the face that absolutely stunned everyone. I mean, you can see the stubble on his chin, the little wrinkles around his eyes. He looked so peaceful. This wasn't some ancient, dusty mummy. This was a person, an individual, literally frozen in time.
So here's the thing. For decades, we thought we knew what he ate. But now, with brand new science, we can ask much deeper questions. Was this just, a regular dinner for an Iron Age guy? Or was it something else entirely, something more meaningful? Maybe a ritual meal before a sacrifice? That's the mystery we're going to dig into.
Okay, so before we get to the food, we really need to understand the man himself and the absolutely wild story of how he was found.
Believe it or not, when two brothers were out cutting peat for fuel in a Danish bog, they stumbled across this body, and their first thought wasn't ancient history. Nope, they called the police. They were completely convinced they had found a recent murder victim. That's how well preserved he was.
And this timeline? This is what makes the story so fascinating. So he dies way back around 400 BC. He then lies hidden for more than 2,000 years. He's found in 1950, and then the case kind of goes cold for another 70 years. Until 2021, when a new team of scientists decided it was time to reopen the investigation into his stomach.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth is this even possible? Well, it's all down to the unique magic of the peat bog. Think of it like a natural pickling jar. The water is super acidic, it's cold, and there's almost no oxygen. The bacteria that usually cause decay just can't survive. This process didn't just preserve his skin and hair, it preserved the most important clue of all. What was inside him?
All right, now let's get to the really juicy part, the forensics. Fast forward to 2021, scientists take a brand new look at what's inside Tulland Man's gut, and they're using technology that would have seemed like straight-up science fiction back in the 50s.
The first analysis back then was actually pretty amazing for its time. They used microscopes and figured out he'd eaten a kind of porridge made of barley and some wild seeds. But this new investigation, it went microscopic. We're talking molecular level, hunting for individual proteins and chemical fingerprints that could paint a way more detailed picture.
And this really gets to the core of why this is so important. As the lead researchers on the new study put it, science just never stands still. You can take old evidence, hit it with new technology, and suddenly you can completely rewrite what we thought we knew about the past.
So, what did this high-tech investigation actually find? Let's do it. Let's rebuild this 2,400-year-old recipe, ingredient by ingredient.
Okay, so the main course was in fact a porridge. The original team got that right, but now we have so much more detail. The scientist actually found tiny fragments of a charred crust. What does that tell us? It means the porridge was probably cooked in a clay pot right over a fire. And based on where it was in his digestive tract, we can tell he ate it somewhere between 12 and 24 hours before he died. Incredible, right?
And this is where the new science just gets mind-blowingly precise. We literally have the recipe now. It was about 85% barley, a standard grain, but it also had 9% pale persicaria, which is pretty much a common weed, and 5% flax. So we're talking a really hearty meal. But yeah, probably not something you'd find in a 5-star restaurant.
So was that it? Just a bowl of porridge? For more than 70 years, everyone thought so. The official story was that Tulland Man's last meal was 100% vegetarian. But the 2021 reanalysis, well, it was about to drop a huge plot twist. And here it is. This was the big breakthrough. By digging into the proteins in his gut, the team found 5 unique peptide sequences. You can think of these like tiny molecular fingerprints. And these fingerprints could only have come from one thing: bony fish. The original team missed it completely. Why? Because any little bones would have just dissolved during digestion. Turns out Tulland Man had fish with his porridge.
But this new analysis gave us so much more than just a menu. It also gave us a shockingly clear health report card for our Iron Age man, and it raised some really big questions about why he was eating this particular meal.
So it turns out Tulland Man wasn't exactly the picture of health. The analysis found eggs from 3 different kinds of intestinal parasites. 2 of them, whipworm and malworm, point to pretty poor sanitation, probably from drinking dirty water or eating contaminated food. But the tapeworm, that one's different. You get that from eating raw or undercooked meat over a long period of time.
So that gives us a clue not just about his last meal, but about his regular diet. And this brings us to the big question, the central debate here. Was this just an ordinary meal? I mean, one theory is that all those wild seeds, the threshing waste, were just, scooped up by accident when they were harvesting the barley. But there's another, more intriguing idea. What if they were added on purpose? In the Iron Age, bogs were seen as sacred places, maybe even gateways to the gods. A special meal could have easily been part of a ritual for someone about to be sacrificed.
And one thing is for sure, whatever this meal was for, it wasn't a punishment. This was not a starvation diet. Scientists calculated that the porridge part alone had over 5,300 kilojoules of energy. To put that in perspective, that's almost half the daily calories for a pretty sedentary person. The point is, he was well fed before he died.
Okay, let's pull all of these threads together. We have the food, we have the body, we have the location. So what does the final picture of Tullen Man's last day on Earth actually look like?
When you piece it all together, the evidence paints a pretty powerful and pretty somber story. First, he eats a hearty, nutritious meal of porridge and fish. Then, sometime later, he's killed by hanging. We know that from the braided leather noose found still around his neck. But here's the key part. He wasn't just dumped. He was laid out carefully, almost gently, in a sleeping position. And he was placed in the bog, a place his people considered sacred, a place for making offering.
So, here's the verdict on this 2,400-year-old cold case. All the evidence points in one direction. Tullen Man was very likely a human sacrifice. His last meal was substantial and carefully prepared, not the scraps you'd give an outcast. And even though his death was violent, his body was treated with care. In the end, modern science has managed to turn this ancient body back into a human story.
And really, that's the most amazing part of all this. Just by taking a second look at his single meal, we've painted this incredibly vivid picture of one person's final day from thousands of years ago. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other stories like this are out there, buried right under our feet, just waiting for the right science to come along and tell them?